Welcome to the Chirp YouTube channel. This is Christy, your friendly online speech-language pathologist and specialist in children's communication development, and therefore behavior, because behavior is a type of communication. We are going to continue today with our series on the pyramid model, and we are in the turquoise tier, which includes creating supportive environments. So this whole little clump of videos that are coming out right now are all about how to create supportive environments. And I've already put out a few videos on this topic, which you can find in this little playlist right there. Today's video, if you read the title, you know, is about consistency. We find that by being consistent, children's challenging behaviors go way, way down. Kids need to know what to expect, and it's really hard for them to know what to expect if we are changing things all the time and if there aren't any predictable routines. So I'm going to talk through a few areas today where you can look at your own classroom, your own home life, and you can think about ways that you could be a little more consistent in those areas. The first thing I'm going to talk about is a schedule. Every family, every classroom needs a schedule. We need to know what happens when we wake up, what happens between waking up and breakfast, what happens between breakfast and lunch. There should be some sort of predictable schedule. I recommend having a visual schedule, even at home, because kids need to know what's happening, and especially kids with communication delays, we need to have a way to communicate to them visually when something is changing from the normal routine. So if the normal routine is that Grandma comes over on Friday nights and we eat popcorn and play a board game, but this Friday Grandma's out of town, we need to have a way to communicate that is acceptable and understandable to our kids. A great way to do that is a visual schedule. So we have little cards. I usually do left to right because kids read in English anyway, left to right. And so this is a really good pre-reading opportunity where we can practice that skill of looking from left to right. If your language does a different thing, then do that thing. In my classroom, one of my classrooms, I did go up to down because that's the space that we had for our class schedule. But if you can go left to right, do it. And then, of course, we change it every day. Today's Tuesday. Here's what we do on Tuesdays. Hopefully before the child gets up in the morning, but you can alternatively have the child help you put the schedule up every morning. Take a picture of what Tuesday is supposed to look like and talk through the schedule as you and your child are putting it up every morning. There are lots of ways to use visual schedules. I recommend the book Visual Strategies for Improving Communication, and I have a link to it continuously in the box below this video. So get it, use it, enjoy it. My second thing to look at when we're thinking about consistency is sleep. I know most parents are very concerned about this. If you're a teacher, you're not going to really be able to do a whole lot about this, but you can ask families to let you know if their child has had a very poor night of sleep for some reason, because then you can offer a little bit more support the following day and you can be prepared for what might occur. If you are a family that has a child, especially a child with developmental differences, sleep is even more important because you're the ones who can help your child sleep better. Teachers can't do it for you. Of course, there are lots of sleep hygiene opportunities where we can improve. the most important thing is to have a sleep routine. So at 7 o'clock, we take our bath. After our bath, we brush our teeth, we floss our teeth, we comb our hair, we put our pajamas on, and we get in bed. This should all be done by 7:30. At 7:30, Dad reads one book, we sing a song, and that's lights out. And this is all done by 7:45. And then that's the end of it. And I know that it's very tricky because kids are sneaky and they will think up all sorts of ways to get out of their bed and come find you. I was that kid also. I had some trouble falling asleep sometimes. But we can manage this with music. My nieces still have music playing in their rooms often when they go to bed. They take cold packs to bed because they don't like to be hot and they often sleep hot. So we can think of ways around some of these arguments that children have about going to bed. The main thing is getting in the routine, sticking with the routine, and not bending a whole lot about it, because it's going to benefit your kids in the long run. And of course, if you can, wake your kids up at the same time every day. Many young children are naturally early risers, but as kids get older, a lot of times they do need more sleep. So pay attention to your kids' development when you decide when to wake them up or start making more noise in the kitchen or whatever it is that you do to encourage your children to get out of bed. It's a good idea for all of us to have a fairly consistent time, even on weekends and holidays, of going to bed and getting up. It's just better for our brains. My third thing is that we want to have consistent expectations of our kids. We don't want to have a different expectation at Dad's house versus Mom's house, if at all possible. I know it's true. We do have different expectations sometimes. And if that's the case, it's best to talk about them and potentially to have some visuals explaining that this is the case. We all admit it. At Dad's house, you're gonna eat junk food more often than at Mom's house, or the other way around. At Mom's house, you're gonna watch more TV than you are at Dad's house. That's just how it is. But that doesn't mean that you get to watch more TV everywhere or eat more junk food everywhere. We have different expectations. Clarifying those expectations and being consistent within that mismatch is important. So do that if at all possible. Even if you're the only parent who communicates with your child in that fashion, it's still a good idea to do it, because kids get a little confused sometimes when expectations change or are different. So when kids come into my classroom, I might have different expectations than their expectations at home. They do get used to it eventually, but it's a lot easier if we talk about it and say, oh, in Miss Christie's class, we are not allowed to say that word, or we're not allowed to hit. We use kind hands in Miss Christie's we use gentle hands in Miss Christie's class. At Mom's house, we don't watch TV during the week, and we watch maybe one movie on the weekend. And that's all the TV we watch. And kids don't use screens because it's not good for their brain. Sometimes at Dad's house, things are a little different. And this could be backwards, of course. I'm not trying to throw dads under the bus because dads are awesome. Happy Father's Day. But these are the expectations that I have. And this is how we're going to respond to those expectations. And that is my next comment, responses. In my own life, when I'm very tired, my responses are a little out of proportion sometimes. And I regret that, and I work on that, but I am much less patient. I'm much more strict and demanding and sort of hair triggerish than I am when I'm well rested and feeling full of vigor. You're probably the same way, because we're both humans. Unless there are some non-humans watching this video, in which case welcome. I'm glad you're here to learn about human beings because we are a very strange species. My responses need to be measured, need to be calm. I don't want to take away my child's favorite toy one day because she was too noisy, but the next day, I don't do anything. Or one day I take away her toy and the next day I throw her toy away because she was too noisy with her toy. That is not going to create a good base for your child to regulate her behavior. In order to regulate our behavior, we need to have a consistent system in which we can build our own regulation. We can figure out what people expect of us, what's okay and what's not okay. And if something's okay one day but not the next day, then I don't know whether I can do that thing or not. And I probably won't worry about fixing that thing a whole lot because it might not be a big deal one day, even if it's a big deal the other day. This is the really big reason if we want to get kids on a consistent keel, we ourselves need to be on a consistent keel. And it's super hard. I am not saying that it's easy. It's super hard to maintain that regulation in ourselves. But if possible, pay attention to your own moods and your own shifts in stamina and all of those things so that you can notice when you're getting to the end of your tether. And you can even talk about it with kids. There's a great book called A 5 Could Make Me Lose Control. It's actually not a book. It is an activity, kind of a workbook activity, but there are these little cards. And every person in the family can pick a card and then you talk through if that thing is a 1, it doesn't make you feel any sort of anxious or angry feelings at all. Or it's a 5, it makes you feel like you're already out of control. Just thinking about that item, blah, it makes you want to explode. So some kids don't mind brushing their teeth at all. Some kids, the idea of brushing their teeth will send them into a panic meltdown because they hate it so much. This is a good activity to talk through before you discuss the fact that if mama's really tired, sometimes when you scream like that, I lose control. And when mama loses control, sometimes she shouts. Sometimes she locks herself in the bedroom, whatever your coping mechanism is. You can talk through that with your child. And this is a really good way to work on social emotional skills too, because your child will realize that you're not perfect, that you have your own challenging issues with regulation, and that you also are learning how to manage yourself better. And you can kind of help each other. My brother gave his daughter permission to gently say to him, if he's acting crazy, Dad, is this really that big of a deal? Because we all know that sometimes he overreacts to things and he gets really angry about things that are not a very big deal. So I think that's really smart of him that he's willing to be humble enough to hear that from his child. I think maybe we all could learn from that. We also want to have similar sensory input from day to day. So not one day with lots and lots of spinning and the next day no spinning at all. If your child benefits from spinning, then we need to add some spinning in every day. If your child needs deep pressure, then your child needs deep pressure every day, not just on Saturdays when you sit on her with a yoga ball or whatever, however you provide that sort of input for her. So keep that in mind. Watch my sensory series right up there to find out more information about that. And of course, if you notice sensory stuff, don't hesitate to get a sensory smart occupational therapist involved because that can really help your kid. We also want to be consistent with the words and phrases that we use. especially our kids who have communication differences, delays, or disorders, we want to make sure that we're not throwing weird words in the mix that they don't understand and expecting them to respond the same way as if we had used words that they do understand. And also it helps to have communication routines. There's a certain thing maybe that we say when it's time to clean up our toys and get ready for dinner. There's a certain way we go about prepping our kids when it's almost time for bed. We need to have these routines because they make kids feel comforted, and also they help children attach their behavior to routines a lot of times. Verbal routines especially. If there's a song that goes along with it, even better. The cleanup song, there are many of those. Those are great. I'm sure there are also songs for getting ready for bed, brushing our teeth, taking a bath. It makes it a lot more fun if it's a routine rather than just a must do or something I'm being forced into by my strict parents. It makes it a little bit more fun if this is something we do every night and it gets us ready to have a really good night of sleep. You can create some of these routines together. You can say, okay, when we clean up, I watched one family that when it was cleanup time, the mom would turn on that Bumblebee song and everybody would try to be bumblebees while they were cleaning up. And it's a really fast-paced classical song. So everyone was running around like little bumblebees and putting everything right back where it belonged. And of course, things were organized in a way where kids could just drop things in bins. It was an easy cleanup system, which is important for kids. And everything was labeled with pictures so they knew exactly which bin things went in. But I thought it was a super great idea to use that song. So you can even talk through that with your kids. Which song do we want to use as our cleanup song? Which song do we want to use as our bedtime song? On Sunday mornings when I was growing up, my mom would always play a song to wake us up because we had to wake up earlier on Sundays than we did on school days to get to church, which was early. And so she would play, good morning, it's time to rise and shine. And when we would hear the trumpet at the beginning, I don't know if it was really a trumpet, but we would start waking up and we'd be grumpy, but we knew it was time to wake up and we did it. The last thing I'm going to talk about today is nutrition. It is very important to realize that the things that we feed our kids make up their bodies and fuel their brains. The food we eat creates the physical person that we are. I did not understand that for most of my life. And then I got sick and I realized that my nutrition needed to be better if I wanted to be well again. And so I say that especially if your kid has any neurodevelopmental differences and you wish to give them the best opportunity for brain health, then we need to focus on nutrition. There are some good books out there. I'll put some links down below, but I just basically want to say that every day your child should be having fruits and vegetables. Every day, if possible, your child should be having whole grains and beans and all of those things that make us healthy, that help our guts. Our guts help our brain helps our mood and helps our language ability and helps our social ability. There are studies on broccoli and symptoms of autism, and eating broccoli, even a tiny little bit, helps symptoms of autism be the challenging symptoms of autism, difficulty with social interactions and difficulty with communication and behavior, challenging behavior. And if we can help our kids have an easier time of it, then don't we want to do that? I'm going to recommend a book here called Just Take a Bite. I do realize that it's very difficult to encourage many of our kids with sensory disturbances to eat a wide variety of healthy foods, especially plant foods, because they have so much texture and so much flavor compared to a French fry or a chicken nugget, which seem to be super popular. The white foods that are already pre-digested, kind of. They don't take much chewing. They don't take much digestion. They don't really taste of much. These are really popular with a lot of our kids, and they are notoriously free from the healthy nutrition that our bodies need to function at peak efficiency. So check out this book, get a feeding therapist involved if you can, and stay tuned because I'm sure we will be discussing this more in a future video. Those are my areas where you might want to think about how to be a little more consistent in your classroom or in your home. I hope that you were stimulated to maybe tweak a thing here or there and make your child's life a little more predictable, because that is going to help behavior, his or her behavior, to be more predictable as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Please leave your comments down below if you have some resident aliens.